Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's a beautiful Monday morning from here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Well, this first half of the year is winding down. Welcome to the show anyway. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, yes, we're getting to see globally the COVID-19 figures. Well, much as many would have thought that by now, okay, we're just taking it a lot easy, haven't had a lot of information about some of these things. In the States, for instance, you know, there's a huge concern. But look at that. Those are our own figures here. What we've got, 24,567. Well, yes, 9,007 discharged and 565 deaths. But if you break it down with the states, Lagos, well, yeah, there you go, 10,144. FCT, the closest, look at the gap there, 1,792, and then it follows with Kano, who, by the way, the NSCDC commended them the other day for having the highest number of tests from states on a particular day. So good to see that those efforts are being made state by state to see how they could test a lot more people. But, you know, there are more concerns. Speaking to several other people over the weekend, there was some who called, and then it was as though I was just Jew. And then they said, look, what are you talking about? There's movement across board. People are doing things as though it's business as usual. And I thought, oh dear, because I mean, the interstate lockdown is supposed to be on. Okay, it's on, but people carry on as though it's nothing. Well, it turns out that Lagos did, the Lagos state government, the officials did go to different parts to see how they had been informed that certain people were violating all of those, and you know, centers such as this one, which you just saw, and several others which you get to see, were said to be violating the protocol, the guidelines with which they have to open. But you know, there are just so many questions about all of this. Much as yes, we need to see how we could ramp up the tests a lot more, given community testing. Look, but I've got there are a lot more concerns, because no matter what the state authorities or the relevant agencies do, if we don't apply ourselves, maybe they'll talk about those who don't believe it, who think that, no, I think we should go on as usual. But if you look at all of those things, yes, we see in different states, actually, where people don't seem to care anymore because they feel, look, we need to do what we have to do. But I just wonder how the authorities will keep at this, because the other thing is the capacity to enforce all of this is going to be very, very key at the end of the day. So do we just keep waiting for the vaccine and ensure that, look, that may be the best shot we have to safeguard everybody else? Because if, oh, look at all of those people. So if people carry on like that, where then lies the hope of us checkmating all of this?
Really, it's a huge challenge, as you put it. And I know that some of these people will say, well, this is our livelihood. This is our source of livelihood. For example, the viewing centers, you see that they've not been on for months. You know, the EPL was suspended, Bundesliga was suspended. So basically, for those months, there was no source of income for them. So they'll say, well, this is a battle between life and livelihood. You know, how do you expect us to survive? Same for, you know, some of the, you know, bars, recreation centers. But, you know, I've seen this chart over time that shows where you're most likely to get coronavirus. And top on that list, you have bars and stuff. And then the next level, you have religious centers. Basically, in these spaces like bars and recreation centers, a lot of people crowded at the same spot. And then, you know, people speak, people yell because of a loud music. And it's normal for, you know, those particles to be in the air. Remember the aerosolization of, COVID-19 particles and what have you. But, that aside, there's been this talk about taking responsibility. And I know that when we hear take responsibility, it sounds like, well, your face masks, use your, hand sanitizers, wash your hands, maintain physical distance or social distancing and what have you. But, we need to take responsibility a step further, really. So if people say this is what we want to do, fine. There should be a responsibility you take for that. And that's where enforcement comes to play. How well can we ensure that people take responsibility for their actions? Because, I mean, imagine someone visiting, this space and goes to their house or their community and they spread it. And I think a concern for me here also is the communities where these places are situated. What are they doing about it? You just feel it's not my business. You drive past, you see lights, you see people gathered, and you just say, well, it's not my business as far as they're not coming to me. But truth is, it is our business. So if you say you want to go to those centers or open those centers, then you have to take responsibility when it comes to enforcement, the law has to take its course. In terms of treatment also, maybe there should be that part. If you get infected as a result of this, maybe you should be responsible for your treatment, that you know how much it actually costs to treat a COVID-19 patient and what have you. So maybe we need to tweak these things, take responsibility measure a notch higher. Just maybe we might get better results as a result of that. But take a look at Lagos accounting for almost half of the national figures. That's a huge source of concern, really.
I remember about a month or thereabout ago, we referenced such a scenario where there was this allegation, there was this whistleblower that, wrote us and said, there is a particular place that is open. We checked and, it wasn't open at the time. I guess that's one of the responsibilities that a number of people need to take. So some people also in Abuja, you remember that event held at that park. And a number of people, of course, also raised, the noise, and the authorities came in. The question that you want to ask is, how strong are the deterrents for people who contravene or violate these guidelines of government? Yes, we know that the police have been talking about, communicating with people so that they take ownership as well. So, using more of passive force than active force. I don't know if that's a better way to put it. The question then would be what Chamberlain said the other time about a vaccine, because to be honest, that's the only solution that seems to make sense to me. What kind of treatment are we getting there? There's this question that we've asked over time. What's the turnaround time, or what they would call the outcome? The outcome is either you are discharged or there is a fatality. We regret the fatalities, no doubt about it. But if you compare the speed at which people catch coronavirus disease as opposed to the rate at which people are discharged, the rate of infection is much higher than the rate of discharge. That should give anyone concern. Why are people not taking this seriously? Question then could be, perhaps an answer would be, maybe they don't even believe that these things exist, or maybe some of them would just say, well, now one thing will keep us. I don't think that any government would just watch and see that, okay, these things will happen to its nationals and people will just, be allowed to die off just like that. There is concern every time one individual in this country has to lose a life. Every one of us here, we know the things that information we have to sift through every day just to ensure that we don't just maintain what Kawade reminded us, life and livelihood, but living as well. So it is really, really important for us all not just to have this information, but also to spread the information. We can see that of Lagos, we can see that of Abuja, and a number of other centers, public places, urban centers like that. How about the rural areas where these things will happen with random abandon? We also remember the story of a wedding, traditional wedding ceremony that was scuttled because they were not also paying attention to these things. So it is not yet Uhuru. The federal government, the authorities have been telling us at various times, it is not yet Uhuru. COVID-19 is still very much among us. There are countries that have had a second wave. We haven't even peaked at the first. We really, really need to take responsibility. Okay.
Well, I must admit that it will take you know, a lot of endurance, a lot of perseverance. And it's something that I don't think that, you know, most people are good at. The fact that your lives are virtually on hold, you know, for as long as they have been, our lives, I should say, you know, it can affect a person psychologically. It can affect a person mentally as well. People are just, you know, they're just moving on, and they're trying their best to go back to how life used to be before Corona came. I think that, you know, I'm not making excuses for people, but I have thought about it, and, you know, the more I think about it, the more I know that we need to not just talk, we need to also enforce, and we also need to keep giving pep talks. I remember I saw something, the way I see the pandemic right now, it's not a sprint. People thought, okay, we'll be home for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, and it should be over. But no, it's a marathon. We have to now develop a mentality that would help us live through this marathon of a pandemic, because apparently, you know, it's not the same energy you run through a sprint that you used to run through a marathon. You have to know how to preserve and conserve energy while you're at it. That's why a lot of us were never good at marathons when we're in school. But be that as it may, this is where we are. I remember reading something by a Pastor Tony Rappo, who was talking about developing the mentality I'm trying to remember the exact words he used now, something about the mentality of perseverance. And he was talking about it in the context of this pandemic, because a lot of people are not very certain, you know, just when this is going to end, and that includes us as well, and how it's going to end. But we know that, you know, you have to stay positive. Even if they say we have to stay here for a while, we have to know how to live within this context. And I think that we can go back to some measure of normality. After all, right now, gentlemen, you're all at work. I mean, we've been through this. God has kept us safe in this period. And of course, with some common sense on your part as well, you know, maintaining social distancing, ensuring you're wearing your mask at all times, especially when you know that you cannot maintain social distancing in an office environment. And so far, so good, people have been okay. So I don't think that our lives necessarily need to stop. It's just that if now that we understand the virus a little better, how does it hurt us, you know, to ensure that when we are going out, we care about the next person. It might not be me, it might be the next person who is vulnerable. Can you wear your mask? How difficult is that? And I think that, you know, when we all say that we need to take personal responsibility, it's not just taking personal responsibility for yourself. Even when you find yourself in a place where people seem to be careless, you have a duty, you have a responsibility to speak up. Yes, we're asking the authorities to say, you know what, enforce these things, ensure that wherever it is you can enforce it. Maybe that's what the Lagos State government should say they are doing now by shutting down places. But I think that those places that are shutting down have an incentive to enforce you know, the rules, the regulations, the protocols in their places of business. That's why, you know, we will say take personal responsibility in those places that want to, you know, keep open. You have a duty to ensure that the people who come in there, you know, keep themselves safe, at least to ensure that your business keeps going. But wherever it is we find ourselves, wherever it is that we see ourselves, people not obeying the protocol, we as Nigerians, as everyday Nigerians who are educated and who understand the dangers of this virus, have a responsibility to tell, you know, our next door neighbor, please, by all means, you know, ensure you protect yourself, not just for yourself, but also because of your neighbor. I don't know how often we have to repeat it, but for as many times as we see the situation arise, I don't think we should get tired. If coronavirus is not tired of us yet, there is no way we can get tired of coronavirus. Gentlemen.
Well, yes, indeed. We're certainly going to face a lot more bumpy road ahead, but how do we adjust? Let's go right on to the dailies and see how they're reflecting some of these items. Look at the Vanguard, for instance. Well, yes, they do lead with $2 billion power project. That's the lead story on the front page of Vanguard newspaper this morning. And look at that, fresh threats as FG Siemens take conflicting positions. Talking about this one, yeah. Uncertainty over Siemens' role. Company keeps mum. Project distribution draws discontent. And then you could see the average monthly power generation Q1 to 4 of 2019. Make of that what you will. I know it comes down to how much of that you enjoy at home. But then, speaking about how this COVID-19 is affecting or hurting anyone, COVID-19, 74.2% of businesses no longer operating. That's ascribed to NECA. So you see, people will give consideration to economic survival first and hope that they stay alive to see those businesses, stay equally alive. But there will be a lot more challenges because now the private hospitals are asking for some certification, COVID-19 certificate, before they attend to patients, which is leading to non-COVID-19 related deaths. So it will always be a challenge. And then you see Ohaneze cracks, splinter group emerges. It's an attempt to destabilize Igbo. That's Nwodo. Wazirike apologizes to Igbo elders, Christian, Muslim leaders over Radio Biafra activities. That's what you see there. There's something about tariff hike here. NERC's silence won't stop implementation July 1st. Ascribed to discos. Maybe they're just saying, you heard, probably. You know how to prepare yourself on that one. There's so much on the front page and equally on the back page as well. Vanguard Sports. Ihalo is a proven goal scorer. Solskjaer beats Di Maria, Falcao's record at Man United. Whoa. Just now? I mean, like, okay, yeah.
Really? Let's use Ronaldo's record, for example, or Rooney's, not Falcao and the rest.
But what's this? Liverpool risked ban after winning EPL title. Go see that for yourself. That's Vanguard today.
Well, let's show you what's making rounds on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Dollar scarcity forces airlines to jack up fare. I mean, we saw this coming.
Well, the jack up fare is with or without dollar scarcity. So to me, this maybe additional, or is it a facade? The airlines have been hit because of this COVID.
Yeah, a lot.
As many businesses have. So.
And you see that rider adopts 460 naira to dollar exchange rate. I mean, it's nice. It's on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and the big picture shows Mrs. Florence Ajimobi paying host to 3 governors just as they came to commiserate with her on the death of her husband. And just right under that, you see Ajimobi buried. Wife tackles Oyo deputy governor on family's treatments. That video made the rounds on social media yesterday. Different reactions to it. And you see governors' associates pay last respect. More details on page 4. APC NEC, Buhari can hold political meeting anywhere in Villa. Presidency replies critics. You know, when you hear anywhere, a lot of places come to mind. And you see, apologize, PDP tells presidency. Apparently that back and forth is still ongoing over last week, Thursday's NEC meeting, APC NEC meeting at the presidential villa. So will this put an end to the back and forth? Well, we'll wait to find out. Speculation linking me to presidential ambition, a distraction that's coming from Wike. But let's see what's right on top of the nameplate. We no longer fix petrol price. PPPRA says it will continue to regulate market. So we don't fix prices, but we'll regulate market. In case you're wondering what that means, you see that story starts on the front page, continues on page 6. And this one, controversies trail July 1st commencement of electricity tariff regime. It's on page 5, just when you were thinking, okay, maybe things might not get more expensive. This one is coming up, but still a few days, anything can happen, right? But some people say, well, we doubt it. Well, let's leave you there for the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
On the front page of the Guardian newspaper, Nigerians pay 152 billion naira tuition in the UK. As COVID-19 flattens naira, parents pay more. Students reject local varsities despite high tuition. Well, this definitely will make for good read. Kade, you're chuckling.
Despite high tuition?
Yep.
Well, that's a good reason to really avoid them then.
Reject local varsities despite high tuition.
Because of high tuition, right?
Maybe I'm not understanding.
Maybe exactly, but that's what the headline says.
For a better understanding of the story, get in the Guardian newspaper, and the story continues on page 6. There's a lot of figures in that story already. Right under that picture of a neglected and ravaged Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway yesterday, death surge as doctors feud over COVID-19 pre-admission status. I think that's the story you referenced earlier, Chamberlain. Experts knock FG and CDC over criminalization of private care. The story is on the front page, continues on page 6. There needs to be a better understanding of this because doesn't seem like it's going to get easier anytime soon. The back page of The Guardian has stranded chess star NCF in war of words over alleged neglect. Find out why that is. We're looking for ways to help him return to Nigeria, says Federation. Igalo equals 95-year Manchester United record. Ellipsis Ibrahimovic. Find out the details of that. On the back page, it's Man U versus Chelsea as Arsenal draw City in FA Cup semi-finals. More details in the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Well, let's look at Daily Trust for you. You see there, insecurity persists as military launches over 40 operations in 5 years. Different operations and exercises, same approach. Well, that statement is in parenthesis. You might want to know if it's somebody saying it or if it's the conclusion they've come to on the front page of the Daily Trust. You also see there why they don't provide solutions, that's according to experts. Then they also have, of course, infographics there for you. Some of the security challenges in Nigeria as listed: armed robbery, farmer-herder clashes, kidnapping, killings, banditry, cultism, bunkering, terrorism, ethnic clashes, and the list goes on. You might want to look inside the paper to see details. And then you also see right there, has Kano flattened the curve of COVID-19? That's a question they are asking. You also see lockdown blues for Rivers traders as markets stay closed. 9 soldiers, 16 others killed as insurgents ambush military convoy. Those are the major stories on the front page of Daily Trust this morning.
Well, take a look at Daily Times next. Presidency to critics. APC NEC meeting was via video conference. Says no law barred Buhari from holding meetings in certain sections of presidential villa. Ruling party chides PDP over attack on presidents for hosting NEC meeting. That's what you find there. Let's see what other stories that may not have heard. NUT kicks against HT reopening of schools in Niger. So, there you go. Who knows what will become of that particular one right there. So, this is what you get to see here as well. And then, Lautech resident doctors begin 5-day warning strike today. So, it is another day, another strike. So, there you go. It's news you can use, actually. So, that's Daily Times this morning. Yeah, we'll have another one.
All right, let's take leadership for you this morning. Nigerian operators lose 150 billion naira to Hajj 2020 Hajj cancellation. You see, airlines, travel agencies seek bailout from government. I mean, we referenced the aviation sector earlier on. Leave depositive fees for 2021 Hajj. NACAN advises intending pilgrims. And FG to announce palliatives for aviation sector this week. More riders, human robotics set for debut at airports. I saw that report from FAN. There was this robot right there in the airport.
If they're announcing those palliatives for the airline operators, do they still need to jack up the fares? Because I know that they've already jacked up the tax that you have to pay from 1,000 to 2, what?
Yeah, the service charge, or what's that?
Do they provide services, really?
Well,
okay, that's what they call it, but I stand corrected because those things, I don't know if I can call them services.
And you understand why. Maybe because they'll tell you for this, I mean, they're like the most hit sector. And that's what people would tell you. So they'll say, well, any help from anywhere is welcome, especially because millions of workers around the world, aviation workers, are at risk. And Nigeria, you can imagine thousands. So, I mean, that probably gives a picture. But see this one, about that 774,000 jobs, across local governments in the country. It's that red strip under the big pictures. You see, FG constitutes selection committee for states. You know, that has been quite controversial. So we'll see how the government, you know, moves through this such that maybe, just maybe, everybody will say, well, this was done in a free and fair manner. We'll leave it there for leadership.
Yeah, and then we'll look at the dailies as well on that note. We're back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we are going to start off focusing on electricity tariff, the planned hike in tariff by the discos. So there's been this back and forth as to, yes, I think the July 1st date is when they expect that to happen, but the NERC's role, the disco's role, those are where you just get this back and forth. So let's find out. We'll have two gentlemen joining us this morning to shed some light on this matter. Honorable Francis Waive is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Power. He joins us from Abuja. We also do have Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a former chairman of NERC, who will be joining us via Skype. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Honorable Francis, let me start with you on this matter. This is not a matter that is new to the House of Reps, particularly because they've had some perspectives on this matter previously. But now that this, do I say it's about to happen on the 1st of July, even as reflected in some of the dailies this morning, what is the thinking, perhaps, of yourself or your colleagues about this planned tariff hike on July 1st?
Chamberlain, I want to thank you for having me, and good morning to Nigerians across the world. Our first concern really is for Nigerians to understand what is about happening. The 9th House of Representatives have been on the side of the people. We have championed the cause of the people to ensure that our people are not exploited by discos or by anybody. And that was why when it first came up, the April 1st date, if you recall, we had to engage the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. And I remember that we had a full-day session in Kano discussing with them on this planned hike. And that resulted in a shift in position whereby they are no longer looking at the cost-reflective tariff. Now we have moved to the service-reflective tariff, and that is what is going to take off from the 1st of July. Our worry as a house is that Nigerians should understand what is going to happen. It is not an increase across board. There are lots of Nigerians who will not experience this increase. And then there are those who will, because the increase is being tied to the service being enjoyed. For instance, those who enjoy 20 to 24 hours electricity are definitely going to experience this increase in tariff. But for those, for instance, who are suffering, as it were 4 hours daily, 5 hours daily, no increase. That is why we have told the discos, provide the service. Nigerians will not pay for darkness. That is what the House of Representatives, indeed the National Assembly, has been saying. You know, NEC has that duty to consult before releasing a new tariff. And when they did the consultation last February and March, that became an issue. Nigerians
I
will
need
not
to just
pay for
follow up
darkness.
on something.
And that is
Pardon me, I need to follow up on something you just said before you move on to your next point, so we don't lose your train of thought on that one. When you say not everybody will be experiencing this tariff, those who have about 20 hours of electricity are the ones to experience this increase in tariff. But the thing is, even if they are getting 10, 15, 20, 30 hours, it's not free. They already pay for it when they have, for those who have prepaid meter. So, or is it that those who are via estimated billing are the ones that will be largely affected? So what is the thinking or rationale behind that? I don't quite get it.
Now the issue here really is that Nigeria has one of the lowest tariffs in Africa as we speak. And the cost must be paid. The federal government has put in over 2 trillion naira since this process started to subsidize electricity, and the economy cannot sustain this. We can't continue like that. The last increase was in 2016, and from 2016 till date, there has not been any increase, but every other thing has increased. Every other commodity, every other thing on sale. There has been inflation, the exchange rate has increased, a lot of things, price of goods and commodities. So there must be an increase. But what we are saying is that Nigerians cannot pay for darkness. That is, you don't enjoy the electricity and yet you have to pay. So with the increase in rate for those who are enjoying it, you have your prepaid meter, of course, you buy your recharge card and you load it. The difference here is that the rate at which you are being charged will go up slightly for those who are enjoying electricity. But for those who are not, the discos and NEC have reached that point where those who are not enjoying electricity, who have 4 hours, 5 hours daily, will not experience any increase. And monitoring and evaluation mechanism have been built in place. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is there to put the checks there. And we in the National Assembly are also going to check. And Nigerians are free.
In other words, what this means, if I understand your point, is that previously those who have been paying and not enjoying electricity will still bear the burden again because there's no punitive measure whatsoever to those who were supposed to provide it and didn't provide.
Yeah. Yes, what we experienced previously was that everybody was like, let's say in an area, a flat rate. I don't mean countrywide now. I mean in an area, flat rate, such that even if you had 2 hours of electricity, somebody else have 20 hours, you pay the same thing. And how can you pay for what you don't enjoy? That was the challenge that came out of the consultation of last February, March, that stopped the April thing, in addition, to the COVID challenges. So that has been taken care of by migrating from the cost reflective tariff to the service reflective tariff, whereby we only now pay for what we enjoy. And in those, before now, it would appear like those who don't enjoy it pay more in a sense, and those who enjoy it pay less in that sense, because they are enjoying the privilege of the service for 20 hours at subsidized cost, as it were. Whereas those who are not enjoying it are paying for what they don't enjoy. That's the situation. The issue of estimated billing is being taken care of. The Nigeria Electricity Regulation Commission has come up with that capping that discos can no longer charge arbitrarily. There must be a benchmark with those who have prepaid meters in the vicinity, and you can't pay more than those who have prepaid meters. And for us in the National Assembly, our Speaker, the Right Honorable Femi Gbajami-Abila, has sponsored this bill to ban estimated billing. So progress is being made, and the federal government right now is intervening in terms of providing prepaid meters. And the process of mapping is going on around the country, and meters are gradually coming in. For those that have come in that have not been cleared at the ports, the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Finance are discussing how to expedite clearance of these meters from the ports so that the issue of estimated billing can become a thing of the past. We must, at one of the,
I remember, I'd like you to clear something very quickly. Part of what you said a little while ago is that, how do we segregate those who have, how do we know, does your committee ensure, maybe the oversight or supervision or whatever it is, that the discos do not charge the ones who, how do they segregate who gets what percentage of electricity in each day? Because once there is an increase in tariff, the normal thing is it goes across board. So how do you, ensure that that does not happen? How do we, is there a class of people that will enjoy power and a class of people that do not?
Now, what has happened is that this July 1st date is placing an obligation on the discos to increase their supply. You know that generation currently is very high, 13,000 thereabout, but what comes out through transmission is about 7,000. But what the discos provide is about 4, so there are losses along the line. And the federal government keeps paying. They pay the GENCOs, take or pay and all of that. But what is happening now is that the NEC, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, now has that responsibility to provide metering between GENCOs and transmission, between transmission and discos, and such that they are also having that obligation to check with the relevant area. So if the disco is saying, for example, that in Maitama, for example, 20 hours electricity is being provided, that the bill there will be increased, that the charges will increase, tariff will increase. But if, for example, in Gwagwalada, for example, only 4 hours is being provided, then there will be no increase. NEC has the responsibility, the primary responsibility, to check on this. And the Nigerian people also have that responsibility to speak out. We are too docile as a people. It's our responsibility that the ball is in our court.
Honorable,
of course, the National Assembly, the House Committee.
If you know, you've lived in this nation for long enough to know that unless there is an automation system, that monitoring is not going to happen. But let's very quickly take this to Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a former chairman of NERC. He joins us via Skype. Thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, what's your take on this electricity tariff increase? One of the conditions given was that meters need to go around and that there needs to be a performance improvement plan. Are you satisfied that that is in place already before this increase is effective?
No, not at all. Well, meters will not go around. I mean, we have to be realistic going forward. All the assumptions and perhaps political speak should end. The fact of the matter is that this tariff increase is almost driven by necessity. The mathematics, the financing of the sector is difficult. We are aware that the federal government has tried to borrow some more money from the World Bank and other sources to try to improve on the network for maybe increased uptake in the short to medium term. But the critical point is that, look, in this sector, the burden has to fall somewhere. The burden of inefficiency, of escalating costs of production, and that burden is falling on the consumers. Again, if you set it as against the fact that the COVID-19 and all, even before COVID, had a severe fiscal challenge and economics were not good for the households and their income were depleted. So what this means, therefore, is any increase at this time would, of course, obviously affect consumers in terms of meaning that they're going to have more outlay to purchase erratic electricity than they had before. Again, what can the government do? Clearly, it's a case of, you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. Either government is also borrowing, and the borrowing is to deal with this inefficiency and debt overhang in the sector. Again, consumers are going to pay more. I think the way out could be, yes, I totally see the reason why the tariff should go up, because if you look at the cost of production, it's a long time the tariff has stayed frozen. Inflation rates are going high, exchange rate is going high. Well, maybe not cost of gas. Again, quantity is small. Quantity is not growing. With greater quantity production, then arguably the cost can go down. So in that instance, I think metering is key here. But then you don't expect any significant metering in the next 1 year, because we have not seen any significant increase in metering in the last 6 to 1 year. What that therefore means is that consumers and customers have to pay more. And paying more does not, in these circumstances we see ourselves, go together with significant improvement. So government can either allow the tariff to go up as they're trying to do, and they use whatever funding they're getting to subsidize directly some class of customers. If you look at the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act, there were contemplations around very high rate of increase, but and then there was also provision for something like Consumer Assistance Fund. I think the problem with our electricity sector is that the classification of customers or consumers do not allow for the economics of dealing with those who can consume more, those who can consume less, those who are staying in places where they're imposing more cost on network, and those who are staying in places where it's not that expensive. Those who are, low, medium income earners, those who are very poor income earners. So if you disaggregate tariff structure, whether in terms of how much you consume, after some point, a new pricing kicks in. So basics are minimal or low price. Then after, let's say, 50 kilowatt per month, every other extra you take carries additional cost. Or you price it according to maybe the places people, geographical areas and their cost to production. So with the way our tariff is lumped together now, what's going to happen inevitably is that those consumers who don't have meters and who will likely not have meter in the next 6 months are going to be those who are going to pay more and get less. You see, the idea of increasing tariff is good if it is going to help with the financing, but at the same time, if you are metered, then it can incentivize conservative behavior of consumers so that people will minimize waste in power sector, so the system gains, they themselves gain in terms of lesser volumetric impact. They're not going to have high bills because they are reducing their consumption by being conservatory. But when they don't have meter, they're exposed to...
in terms of the segregation you talked about, Mr. Madi, I think now they're transitioning to high demand and low demand, consumers. But just like you said, so obviously this increase for especially the high demand doesn't mean that electricity supply will necessarily get better, at least for now. Now, a lot of people are looking to the regulatory body, the NERC, saying, what are you going to say? And, the discos have put out a statement saying, well, whether the NERC says something or not, we're going ahead with this. So in terms of the role of the NERC, especially in enforcing this, ensuring that the fine prints are done well such that this goes smoothly, what do you say regarding their role?
Well, the NERC role is big, and I think they're trying. For example, they talked about prohibiting estimation or capping estimation at some, and of course, they've started threatening some discos and not comply. So NERC has a big role to, first, estimation has to be capped and reviewed from time to time. Secondly, they have a big role to ensure, even if the meters are available, there's also a logistic problem with the discos or even incentive problem to meter aggressively. So the regulator still has a responsibility to ensure that metering happens as it ought to happen concerning the finance of the sector. So that's a big role. Again, when we started with CAPME, which in my view remain a better option than what we are doing now, what does that mean? That the very quick fix of this sector, which may be expensive, is to meter everybody. In fact, if you meter everybody, then you can allow the price to roll. So this sector needs a breather, financial breather, and it might come from consumers. We're going to go from consumers who are sure that they are paying what they are consuming, even if the rate of consumption is high. We can all accept that, look, we need to finance this sector from, crowdsourcing for funding from consumers. But then the question is, are some people having a fair share of that cost? So NRC's role with tariff reviews, and I think they should probably allow this tariff to go as planned with some caveats. Don't forget that this builds back into the economics of the national budget post-COVID. You're going to talk in terms of a depleted real income for households. You're talking in terms when government wants to improve stimulus so that people have more money and spend themselves out of recession. So the cost impact of this tariff increase in terms of general inflation is huge. Don't forget about 30% of production cost is energy related. And for households, for small businesses, it might be more. So what this means is that we're going to witness a general price inflation. Then if you couple that with unemployment, you have stagflation in an era where the government fiscal buffers and protections are very low and very weak. So I think that really this is something we should proceed with a lot of caution and with a sense not of triumph that, look, these things are going to improve, but a sense in which the NRC goes back to the basics and try to, as we improve the finances of the discourse, we improve their prudence, we improve their investment in relevant areas, we improve their managerial, change management, so that at least in the short to medium term, you have some improvement that go with this inevitable price increase. I would argue that it's next to ensure that somehow
let me take it from there on to Honorable Waive. Well, he's just talking about the service delivery, but there's supposed to be a charter on service delivery. They talk about Those who get longer hours, well, you have to pay a little more. Much as there are questions as to whether or not that is the nature of that policy. But speaking specifically about the Charter on Service Delivery, so is it that the House or the committee, or is it there now such that if there's an increase, and assuming I'm supposed to get 20 hours of uninterrupted power supply, and I pay for 20 hours of uninterrupted power supply, and it turns out that I don't get that 20 hours, what happens? Are they going to say, okay, well, if you pay for 20 and you got 10 or 8 or 15, you get the other ones free? Is that being considered? And why shouldn't they be if it's not?
Yeah, that's a very intelligent question, especially when you are dealing with systems that can be disrupted along the line. I think NERC has a responsibility to come up with something along that line. It's a new system we are beginning, and we hope that as we face challenges, tools will be developed to handle the issue. But right now, the position is you pay for what you get, so that if an area is supposed to get 24 hours, or that's what they usually get, and based on that, their tariff has gone up, but something happens and the tariff comes down. That's why there's regulation. The Regulatory Commission will have to come in and structure that a bit. Remember that the federal government is doing a lot to make electricity available. There's the World Bank $750 million loan. There's the Siemens $2 billion, and several other things being put in place to ensure that we have stable electricity across the country. Government is not thinking that some people should have 5 hours and some have 20 hours. What government is thinking is 24 hours, 24/7. And the House of Representatives, indeed the National Assembly, is standing for that to happen, for Nigerians to have uninterrupted power supply. Those who started with us to unbundle their electricity systems, like India, like Ghana, they've gone ahead of us, and today privatization has really taken a foothold. The discourse have a lot to do to catch up, and we have a responsibility to oversight.
And speaking about your responsibility,
is going around the discourse in the country.
Okay, let me follow up on that, on your responsibility. Is your committee going to then mandate the NERC to come up with that charter such that, and give them a timeline within which, if you have to increase this tariff, because this will not be the last time we will talk about tariff increase. So there has to be something to ensure that both parties fulfill their own end of the bargain and not just lump the burden on the consumers.
Yeah, there is. You know, the Regulatory Commission is required to check this tariff twice yearly, and so that it's not something once and for all and you forget it. Every year, 2 times in a year, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, working with the DISCOs, come up with a new tariff. The DISCOs, of course, will bring up their own proposals, and any ROC would look at it and check what's on the ground. So there's a mechanism in place already. It's just that it has not been allowed to come to play, and that is what we are expecting will come to play from the 1st of July. The DISCOs will definitely have to pay their obligations to government, and we have to monitor. Nigerians also have to stand on that and monitor and make sure that we pay only for what we get. The system is there in place. It's not something to develop afresh. It's just that it has not been put to test, to use. And what is beginning now is that it's not going to be put to use, and everybody will be there to look at it and see how it functions. This is inevitable. We can't run away from it. The Power Consumers Assistance Fund, PCAF, that is meant for vulnerable groups, has to be put into action at this moment. We have to kickstart it. And it's only when we do a thing like this that we can kickstart it. And the National Assembly will not sit down and see Nigerians pay for darkness or pay for what they don't receive. We are not going to allow that. And at the same time, we want to see that power supply increases in this country so that we can be a part of the civilized world, be a part of the developed nations of the world.
We will come back. We'll be back and let both of you just talk a little more on this matter, including shedding some more light on some of those points that you've just mentioned in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're talking about this planned increase with the electricity tariff. We're supposed to take off on the 1st of July. Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, stay with us, former chairman of NERC, to give us at least inside perspectives on how some of these things should work. Well, Dr. Amadi, I was talking about the charter on service delivery just before we went to break. And then what's going on with that? Because most of what is usually said when it comes to this increase is just we need to increase this in order to meet up with certain things. There really isn't that much emphasis on that component, such that if you don't meet up with your obligations, you have to do something about compensating the consumers. Why are they usually silent on that? Or do we miss it when they say it, if at all they say it?
Well, I think that's a very good observation. Even when I was there, we were not doing much to compensate customers. There were occasions, one or two occasions, where there was price gouging, and we intervened in the 1004 cases and so many others, and we forced the disco eco then to refund customers. So, but let's put it this way: the proclivity of regulators in our own developed economy, where they're trying to create market, is that we focus more often on production, on how to enable transactions, on how to balance the book of operators, but we don't balance the book of consumers. And so that's a proclivity, a bias, even in developed economies. And that's what regulators have to watch. Now, what matters is how to create a balance. Oftentimes, regulators also don't have the capacity. We forget that regulation is asymmetrical. The discos, the operators have better knowledge about their cost profile, better information than regulators. So regulators have to improve their data set, their data analysis and capabilities. They also have to improve monitoring and evaluation and the supervision. That's why we opened the zonal offices, and we're talking about state offices. And now, because of other constraints, NEC, I understand, have rolled back that. They don't have the zonal offices. You need to have intensity in monitoring, especially with the behavior of corporations that are regulated all over the world, is to game the system. It's difficult for the US, for example, to deal with telecom. You really need to understand their business profile, their cost profile, and effectively see where they're hiding the dead bodies. And so I think that apart from people thinking that the regulator has been compromised, it could be actually they lack capacity to do a lot of that work. But then that's not an excuse. We need to now begin to balance the book of consumers and those of the operators. And one area is
yeah. Sorry, so speaking about that, what is wrong with them or having meters that can actually tell how much or how many hours of electricity that people have consumed? That can happen here.
It should be elementary. In fact, the rule says nobody ought to be on the network who's not metered by a working, perhaps now digital meter. That's the rule. But what happened is that we had a legacy. We ran this sector with no metering. As at 2012, I think, when I commissioned the first metering inquiry, with the metering report says we are less than 40% of Nigerian consumers who have metered. Today, it's maybe highest, 45% or even the same 40%, because new consumers are coming to the network, and the metering we are doing is just basically like moving the chairs and replacing them again. So the question is that we had a legacy crisis of metering. Maybe what we should have done before privatizing would have been to see metering as a national commitment, meter everybody, and then unleash the market force. But we unleash the market force without metering. And so when people say, look, in fact, somebody came to us and say, why should you not allow us? Okay, the option is for us to abolish everybody who doesn't have a meter until you have a meter, no electricity. That would be collapse of service. So the crisis we have now is to how to manage metering. It's a simple thing. If you have a device, you can then, for example, even if it's not analog or it's postpaid meter, you can come back in 2 months and read. You can estimate for 1 month, which is what the law allows, 1, 2 months. The third month, you come back to rectify, reindex the tariff, the bill to what is actually it is. But today, even with postpaid meters that are still functioning, the discos don't go around reading the meters. They send this indiscriminate bill. So I think that we're dealing with a perfect storm of legacy crisis, of a complexity that are increasing every day, and the capacity to deal with them. above all, the financing. And so government is taking more, investing more in the network, even though it has been privatized, and then consumers have to pay more. So I think we can't burn the candle at both ends. So if we're going to allow the tariff to be cost reflective, which I think is the right thing to do, then we should, government should now focus on subsidizing, on helping consumption of those who cannot consume, and improving monitoring and regulation. So if we're going to be helping the discourse with financing, then at the same time, we are asking consumers to consume more in a very difficult economic circumstance. It's burning the candle at both ends, and the result will be that we'll increase poverty, we will also increase household consumption, and that will slow down the recovery in the depression. We need to
pick up on that, Dr. Ahmad. Let me quickly pick up on that, because for consumers, they say, well, the service should get better, then we'll be, motivated to pay more. But obviously, the discourse are saying, well, pay more first, and then the service will get better. And clearly, like you have mentioned, there is an issue of investment, having more financing to invest more and get more infrastructure such that, power supply will be improved. So we have those that will be classified as maximum demand consumers now paying more. I hear that those that don't consume as much will pay less. We'll probably speak to the Honorable to clear the air on that. But what is the guarantee that now that, those who consume more, pay more, would start paying that higher tariff, that the supply will get better eventually? Should there even be a time frame such that you say, okay, after 6 months, that we need to see considerable improvement in service delivery?
Well, I guess that question is for me. I think for me, the challenge is, are we sure that things will actually get better in the short while? I like being truthful so that consumers know. I think there should be increase in communication. Yes, things can get better. Those who consume more should pay more. But the question is, are you talking about consume more in terms of volume? Are you talking about consume more in terms of the quality of power, which is actually determined by whether you are MD, maximum demand, which means you are compared to the transformer, and so your quality of power is improved. Anyhow you do it, I think the regulator has to show that costs in the industry are borne proportionate to service delivery. That's number one. Number two is, for me, is that, look, there are many things to be done to improve service. One is better regulation. I think they are getting there. Second is the policy confusion, the threat around disinvestment or naturalizing the asset creates confusion. The discourse really need to go out and get money. And if they can't get the money, because this is a sector you invest and recover later. What we are suffering from is not just that consumers are not paying enough, is that the operators don't have the capacity, or the market is not friendly for them to borrow as they ought to borrow. So I think the emphasis should not be placed on a quick recovery. We're not going to have quick improvement right now. We're going to have a delayed improvement, because you need to really dig deep and change the network and improve it. So anybody who is telling us that, look, once in July 1st, you start paying the new tariff, you're going to have improved service, we are taking the people back to the old alley of deception where they failed. The real issue that this sector is in a mess. And to start digging out, we need to do the basics, which includes a tariff that's good enough, at the same time, which includes effective regulation, which includes policy clarity, and which includes commitment to investment by the operators. So we need to help them get access to financing, even though it's difficult in the COVID era, but they need to get financing and invest. And if they don't have the capacity, we should not be thinking, is it time for competition? Is it time to further liberalize the network? Is it time to use regulatory processes to get in more investors who can come and own part of the asset and therefore bring in financing? But my view is, look, there will be improvement, but it might be improvement that we'll lose when there's collapse of system.
Well, Dr. Ahmad, just a moment. Let me take it to Honorable Waive. I mean, you've raised some issues. You talked about the quality of service. And, Honorable Waive, for a lot of people, they wouldn't mind, like I said, if the service improves and then they have to pay more. But then you take a look at the quality of service, low voltage, for example. So you have to get additional equipment just to power some of your equipment. That is costing more. Some of them get 1 day on, 1 day off. And, maybe for the distribution company, they give 20 hours to that location. But inside that same location, they have to split it 1 day off. That's for Honorable Waive, actually. And they have to split it 1 day on, 1 day off. That's another challenge. I could go on and on with what a lot of people face. I was going through a poll by one of his distribution companies, and they were asking for how many hours do you get power? And a majority of people say less than 5 hours daily. So if you're saying that those that get more power will pay a higher tariff, how are we sure we'll even make enough money to invest or reinvest in the sector? It's not quite clear. So what are you doing exactly to have a fine blueprint on that?
Yes, the service-based tariff is such that discos will now be motivated to provide better services in order to earn more money, such that they will be able to pay their obligations to government. That's the goal. But there are challenges with the discos, and the National Assembly is doing a lot to look at the Power Sector Review Act to see how we can do some bring up some changes. If you follow the news, you will know that in both chambers of the National Assembly at the moment, there is a committee, other committees, work going on to review what has been happening in the power sector. The essence in the beginning, the aim, the goal in the beginning was to increase investment, improve efficiency, attract foreign investment and all of that. But whether or not we have seen that happen is a different story. So we're working on that to see how we can change that so that Nigerians can have the best. For example, the management of each of these discos, the federal government have 40% shares, but yet has only one director who is not executive. And the discos are allowed to run the show. The problem here is that what have they brought to the table? What has improved infrastructure-wise? So that is why we have these problems we're talking about, one day on, one day off, power not being constantly available. They seem to have been left on their own, as it were. And those are the changes that are going to come with these investigations we are doing, with these reviews that are going to come of the Power Review Act that we're working on. Foreign investment must be attracted to the sector. And Nigerians must be willing to pay where the services are available, because the issue here with Nigerians and electricity is the issue of affordability and the willingness to pay. You put that side by side, pari passu, with the quality of service that is available to the Nigerian people. In many areas, the quality of service has not been good, and this issue of service tariff, service-based tariff, is the key to solve that problem. It's not just cost-based anymore.
Well, that's exactly where I think I'd like to take you up on that question. I was going to ask you just before you brought it up. This is not the first time we're having electricity tariff increase, and there is a system through which, I mean, a schedule, so to speak, through which this usually happens. What is the assurance we have? Because I believe there ought to be milestones that if you attain this milestone, then we can consider another tariff increase. There were milestones before this one, given by the NERC and the federal government. I don't know if the House Committee is also aware of that, that you meet these milestones and then we can talk about an increase in tariff. One of those milestones is metering, and you say it is still in the works. Another one is what Chamberlain asked about the other time, the service charter. No, nothing effective so far. I'm pretty sure that your constituents will be asking you questions about the power sector. So are there milestones that will be given, just in case this one goes on? Are there milestones that have been given or that must be given, that without these milestones, no further increase in tariff?
Of course, there are milestones, and the review period is usually every 6 months. But you must remember that the last increase was in 2016. So there have not been any increase since 2016. So now that the increase is coming for the first time in, say, 4 years, every 6 months there will be a review. And the standards have been, the milestones are clearly there. Metering, for example, that you have said, is there. Pari passu, take it side by side with the issue of capping, billing capping, such that estimated billing is no longer attainable. And if you don't have a meter, your bill must not be more than the neighbor who has a meter. That's the capping that the NERC has put in place, and we monitor that to see that that happens. So if this happens on the 1st of July, by the end of December, we'll be able to come back and look at it. What has happened so far? Who got increased in tariff? Did they get the required service? How many new meters got into the system? These are the checks and balances that will come in. Are there complaints from consumers who were charged but yet didn't get that number of hours of service? All of this will be reviewed biannually. That is what the standard says, and that's what we are going to do. Of course, my constituents are asking, and we are doing our bit to make sure that we put the discos on their toes. The discos really need to sit up, and we cannot sit down and wait for them forever. And that is why we are moving on. And the entire country would have to...
apologies there, but Honorable Ive, we know the CBN and how they regulate the banks. We know the NCC, what they do, how they regulate the telecom sector. But for the NERC, what indices did they take a look at? What is this predicated on? How did they arrive at the costs? How did they determine the cost of electricity to be paid, either for R3, D3, whichever?
Well, the NERC has done their job. I don't work for them, but I know that they look at the exchange rate, they look at inflation, they look at the volume, the service delivery, they look at the volume of electricity that is pumped, they put there into the market. And the discos have the responsibility of being the point in this chain of generation, transmission, and distribution where the income flows from. They relate with the consumers, the end consumers, and collect the inflow. That's their responsibility. And NERC monitors.
Let me just jump in and ask this. I asked because, I mean, you oversight them, so we thought that you have interfaced and checked that the data that they have is not just the one supplied by the discos only. Is that the case?
Yes, sure. It's not just that supplied by the discos. NERC goes out there and they do their own bit, and we oversight that. And like I mentioned earlier, if not for COVID, we would have been out in the field already with the discos, checking what is happening on ground, cross-checking with the reports that we have from NERC. But very soon we'll be out there to cross-check what NERC has given to us, and see that the discos are compliant, particularly with this increase, to be sure that those who are experiencing the increase are getting the maximum that they should get. We are going to ensure that. You must remember that the National Assembly is people.
That's kind of strange because, I mean, the last time we did check, I'm not sure the NERC have their own capacity to generate their own data, because these are data declared by discos. Maybe I should take it to Dr. Amadi. Let me just ask him, because he has been in the NERC. Dr. Amadi, could you shed some light on that? Because you spoke about capacity, lack of capacity on the part of the NERC, the regulatory body, to determine some of these things. So when you made reference to that, or tell us pointedly, does the NERC have capacity to generate their own data and not just the one supplied by the discos?
Well, they do, but don't forget that capacity is not a finite product. It keeps increasing. You have to improve your capacity, and vis-a-vis the challenge. But let me be clear on this. NRC has very detailed, comprehensive methodology for determining tariff. It's scientific. But then there are holes in that scientific methodology that you need to plug off and on. So, for example, before we left, we had a tariff regulation that requires that henceforth, discos will need to consult with their customers. And in those consultation meetings by the discos, not with the regulator, they will send people, they give us video, and then the consumers will come as a group as well. Rate hearing. Now, what happened is that the rigor we employ on rate hearing is low. What that requires that, look, a disco wants to increase his tariff. It shouldn't be a blanket tariff increase. You go to Ikeja, call meetings, and tell consumers, these are the next investment that we need. This investment will create this level of improvement. And this is why we need to make this investment. It's a proven investment. The regulator has looked at the prudence check and relevance check and said the price tag for this investment is appropriate. Okay, after that consultation, you take all those, the NEC already has their people attending those meetings and therefore taking their independent report. And then, of course, the disco will now file his request or his request for tariff increase with all these documentations. Then the regulator will now have a almost quasi-judicial hearing where customers and other epistemic communities, researchers, scientists, economists, can come in as interveners. And then they prudently examine whether a case has been made. A rate case is like a case in the court, because that's why the law says fair and just tariff. Fair, just, they imply due process, they imply rule of law, they imply justification for increase. Now, that's the way to go, and that's the way that ensures we will consumers and for operators. But what happened is, like I said, I talk about capacity, is that first is procedural regulatory due process. Oftentimes, because of the challenges of the sector, because we need to inflate the sector financially, we might not go through all this process. So that's one crisis area. The second crisis area is that the consumers are not organized. And unlike other countries of the world, like developed economies, we are centers. Professional epistemic communities are concerned about pricing and about how regulators do their work. So those groups will be the ones who will intervene and write and challenge the methodology. Our methodology was crafted at the beginning of privatization. Many things need to be changed, and that's why the legislators are not putting pressure. I remember, you are doing well, but you don't need to go to the field. You will see nothing. You need to focus on the data. You need to ask the regulator to provide a detailed explanation of
just one moment. Just one moment. There was something that you said now that I'd like to get clarity on. When you say the consumers are not organized, please shed some light, because on the one hand, there are... Oh, please, go on, please.
Yeah, the key thing about regulation is balance of force and balance of outcome. So when I was a regulator, I saw that consumers are disparate. That means they are scattered, different households, different people. They are not organized as a group in order to fight for their interest. So when a company that hires scientists, engineers, economists, comes with data to deceive the regulator, who is defending the consumer in that meeting? And that's why I created the Consumer Advocacy Network. It was the first time a regulator tried to bring together consumers. And that idea was very simple. You have to create a balance of power.
Dr. Amadi, just one moment. I'm sorry, we need to begin to wrap up now. But let me ask you this. Given the volume of challenges in the power sector, how significant is this tariff increase to solve the problem of the power sector?
The truth, my brother, is that the problem of the sector is not just tariff. In my estimation, lack of tariff, cost of tariff is probably less than 30% the cost. The problem are twofold. One is modeling. The notion of our privatization carry out effort in improving commerciality and corporate governance. So we focus so much on privatizing with the assumption that private ownership is a source of efficiency. What gives efficiency is the quality of rules in the sector. Governance. So now NEC is now trying to build up those corporate governance capabilities of operators. That's one. Second is that the idea is that tariff alone will not solve this financial crisis, because essentially, if you're going to have a real cost-effective tariff, then electricity will be under-consumed, which is a public good, and government would allow that. So you need to look also at the financing profile capability of the investors as you look at the tariff profile. So you are improving tariff, they're also improving their capacity to spend and recover over time. So what we have seen is that we privatized and we didn't have pocketed investors, and of course the investment climate didn't allow for the level of investment that we need to crowd in from financial houses, from capital and money market. We didn't have that. The central bank weighed in and helped, and today the debt overhang from the sector is becoming a contagion to the banking sector. And so everyone is trying to push away this debt because they are...
Dr. Amadi, pardon me, we need to also get at least his concluding thought, Honorable Waive. So in all of this, we haven't really heard how, because you've spoken in favor of this July 1st tariff increase, but the thing about it is that consumers don't seem to get the point. I mean, if I'm going to pay more and they're supposed to supply me more and I don't get it, what's the reference? How do I seek redress? How do you measure the quality of service that's been delivered? If not, look, we're all going to be having the short end of the stick.
Yeah, we cannot, as Nigerians, continue to live at the mercy of this discourse. We must attract other investors. And in order to do that, the tariff must be attractive to investors. Otherwise, it will continue to be a monopoly in different areas where a discourse is in charge. And they think
what is attractive tariff?
is to ensure that we have alternatives by attracting investment.
What will an attractive tariff be?
I didn't get that.
What will an attractive tariff be?
That would have to be worked out. It's not something to just throw out. It's something to be worked out between the regulator, the discos, and the Nigerian people. We must get to the point where somebody who invests in electricity distribution, for example, should be able to get returns on investment. In that way, other investors will come and there will be a competition on getting the best to serve as discos.
We get the point, but isn't that placing the cart before the horse? If you're going to invest and get your return on investment, you can't shortchange people. There has to be something. If I pay for service and you don't deliver, am I supposed to look the other way?
The challenge here, Chamberlain, is that the price structure, the tariff is regulated. So if I'm going to invest and I'm told that this is the capping I can charge, and I know I can't get my returns on that, it discourages me from investing. That's the issue. Going forward, we are going to do this oversight around the country, and we are encouraging consumers to come when we come to different areas.
Consumers came before and they said, look, they didn't want tariff increase. But here we are, it's still going to happen. But we do thank you for your time.
We can't run away from it, Chamberlain.
Honorable Francis Waive is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Power. We also did speak with Dr. Sam Amadi, who's a former chairman of NERC. Gentlemen, thank you both for talking to us today. We're back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, yes, we'll be talking about those forthcoming elections. We've got Issa Aremu, who, well, Ms. Aremu, first of all, thank you for joining us this morning, but we need some clarification from you. We know you used to be former vice president of Nigeria Labour Congress, but we also know your foray into politics, Labour Party, then we understand you eventually went on to the APC after trying to vie for the governorship ticket via Labour Party Inquirer. So what is the situation at the moment? Are you still with the APC now?
No, I've never been with APC, Chamberlain.
Oh, okay.
I remain a member of Labour Party. And of course, you also know that I have multiple identities. I'm also vice president of Industrial Global Union.
So I wonder which of the identity we're going to use this morning.
Yeah, but anyone you want to take, former vice president of NSC and also former Labour.
We've heard some perspective, some materials from you about these two elections. INEC has released the guideline, how they're going to go about these elections. I mean, already we've seen preparation in top gear on the part of the political parties, what they intend to do. But you don't think that these elections should proceed, do you?
Yeah, Chamberlain, well, I'm not in a position to ask you questions, but I've been in a position to listen to you all the time, including this morning, and you are all doing a good job. Three of you are listening to your first remark, from Moepe in Abuja to yourself, and my very good friend together with you in Lagos there. I mean, you've been agonizing about the spread of this virus. The figure today is that the whole world will have reached, 500,000 mark of deaths. You also said as much that we're having a huge spike. The rate of inflation is higher, far higher than the recovery. The last time, that was sometime last week, the chairman of the Presidential Tax Force was very explicit. He raised an alarm that very soon we'll be going to graves in hundreds. High-profile deaths, the latest being the former governor of Oyo State, my very good friend, Senator Ajimabi, who died of the complication arising from COVID-19. So, Chambale, you are making the point every day. This is real. We're in trouble. A dry cough is now the trumpeter of death everywhere. And back to the numbers in the state, maybe the immediate one, September 19, I hope I got it right for Edo elections. Infection rate is almost 1,000 now. The rate of recovery is far, far less than the rate of infections. The death mark is getting close to 40, if not 50 now. So we have said that we're in a state of war. Does it make sense that we conduct elections? If we are talking of new normal, I think we need to change. And let me also leave you with this thought, if you check the 1999 Constitution, the Constitution mentions the right to life 18 times, health and safety 18 times. Find out how many times we talk of elections. Elections are just the means, they are not the end. Life is the end. So we cannot, there's a disconnect between the sermon from the rooftop every day, from presidential task force that we're having a war in our hand, and then we're behaving as if business as usual. So
But comrade, don't leave yet. I think we'll still have a few more minutes. Have you seen the INEC's COVID-19 protocol? They are mindful of all of these things, and they came up with that guideline to ensure that they don't put anyone in harm's way, and that's how they intend to conduct this election. So in spite of that, you think that, no, that wouldn't work?
Yeah, but it is not an academic issue. It's not about policy guideline. We are talking about lives, and they are all practical. In the long run, in fact, in the short run, we seem to have all dead if we don't really follow certain basic rules. Chambale, as I'm talking to you now, also check, there are 16 countries that have postponed elections, various kinds of elections, local elections, provincial elections, in Austria, in Bangladesh, country of our size, also facing the same challenge, the postponed election in Zimbabwe, in Canada, British Caledonia, just postponed election indefinitely.
Well, at the same time, there are countries that also conducted elections and have also declared winner, and some of them presidents.
Nicely. I mean, the choice, Chambale, the choice, Chambale, the choice is ours. I mean, Burundi conducted elections. And after the elections, the president that conducted the election died of complications arising from COVID. I mean, what is election for? But what I'm even saying is that let's be driven by our own logic. I think only the living can vote and be voted for. And I'm raising this point because it's important for us to have a pause about the way we do business as usual. I don't want to go into the dynamics of the elections, but it has been a lot of complications, of crises. The former candidate has moved to the new party. All the two candidates have swapped positions. I mean, it's all part of the desperation under the condition that we're holding the elections. But the point I'm raising is that I had the privilege of watching the primaries of the parties, and I've seen a lot of movement going on. We're yet to see the campaigns. What I've seen so far, those protocols have not been observed. They have been observed more in the breach. Very few are putting on nose masks. Social distancing is not there. So we need to ask ourselves, what is governance all about? Nigerian Constitution says it's all about security and welfare of our citizens. And I think INEC is time to really be proactive and guide us very well. The spokesman for INEC, Festus Okoye, he says so categorically, we are moving to uncharted waters. He says so, in spite of the policy on COVID that they've launched. Now, uncharted water, and even that one, I don't think it's even been fair. The water for COVID is already, we have passed through it. You know the figures. The figures are rising. People are dying. Brazil, which is of our population, had lost close to almost about 55,000 people to that. Infection rate has moved into millions, The same thing with Bangladesh. So you can't say, with respect to COVID, we're already chatted, we are tested. Now the choice is ours to know that we walk the talk On the one hand, you can't be talking of the need to preserve life when we are moving into...
Mr. Aremu, the choices are definitely ours, and I think just as you and Chamberlain have just conversed now, there are countries that have postponed elections, and there are countries that have held elections. You cited Burundi. Well, another one is South Korea, where they had the elections, and the protocols were effectively observed, even while they were at the peak. And today, the figures in their country say that they have dropped the figures seriously. So doesn't the responsibility of conducting the elections, fall to us as a people? The protocols, abiding by the protocols, fall to us as a people. If we are able to abide by the protocols, do you still think, it's okay for us to go on or to still call off the elections?
No, I think you are still talking of if. I mean, let's be practical here. Let's look at what is on the number. We have not been able to enforce the protocol in the market. We have not been able to enforce the protocol in public vehicles, public transportation. We have not been able to enforce the protocol even in government houses. I mean, you just had the story in Delta. You know what has happened there. We have not been able to enforce protocol in cemeteries. Is it when you are going to have a chaotic situation at elections, which even with the best of time, elections are always marked with rowdiness, with violence, and of course, Edo has a tested record of that. The same thing, So what I'm saying is that it's not hypothetical, it is real. But as I said, the choice is ours, but I strongly believe that if we go by the spirit of the Constitution, which talks about the need for security and welfare of citizens, it talks about public health and safety, there is enough within our Constitution, outside, far ahead of electoral law, to say that this election should be postponed with the best global practices. Again, there's Section 23 of the Constitution, which deals with fundamental principles of state policy, also talk of our ethics, national ethics, which we again will obey more in the breach. It's about discipline, the need for integrity of policy, the need for coordination of all the agencies. So we cannot be agonizing every day that the spike is on the increase when we know what leads to it. We know very well that people cannot maintain social distancing, and yet we are going into a more chaotic atmosphere of running primaries and running elections. And let me tell you, on the last note, let me also say we are not short of governors in this country. What we are short of is governance. And this is a test of governance. To postpone elections, to produce another governor who have never shown us what is their plan to moderate the rate of infections. All the candidates, I haven't had them debating or saying they are leading to reduce the rate of infection. They haven't talked of how they are going to enhance public health, which has already been stressed. And then, if the whole idea of election is to create more jobs for new set of governors, that is completely not the spirit of the Constitution.
But Mr. Aremu, you've referenced the Constitution a number of times, but you also know that the Constitution makes provisions for the number of days, minimum or maximum, within which elections must be conducted for certain specific offices in the land. Don't you see a constitutional crisis if the elections do not hold within those periods?
Yeah, well, I don't see a crisis. I see a challenge, and if there's a will, there'll be the way. There are many things that are not contained in the Constitution. The Constitution never imagined there will be a virus known as COVID-19 that will set the whole world packing. There will be a COVID in which we all quickly have to knock down. There won't be a COVID where we're talking of first wave, second wave, in which possibly we are even talking of another lockdown. Now, I think if we can apply, you know better than me, doctrines of necessity on a couple of issues, more than ever before, I think it's necessary now for us to save lives, because only those who live will vote. Only those who live will be voted for. And the best tribute you can have to those who have died, both low and high, is to pause a little bit and wonder that between now and September, how many of us want to be alive to vote or be voted for? I've just referred to, very well, we lost a chief of staff at the federal level. We lost a deputy chairman of a ruling party. I don't think, as of 2 weeks ago, everybody thought he would be part of the elections in the two states. But now he's nowhere to be found. I think all our posthumous tributes and comment, we just amount to crocodile tears. If we cannot pause a bit and say, wait a bit, this pandemic, an injury to one is an injury to all, and that we need to really lower the rate of infection. And many countries of our level, they are already doing that. It's about choice. America says...
Yeah, clearly INEC is confident to an extent that they can conduct these elections in the COVID-19 context. In fact, there's this proposal to have elections as, what's that term again? To have them as essential services. But, we just showed you some pictures from the recently conducted primaries in Edo State. And I think they will give us an insight into what to expect when the elections happen come September and October in Edo and Ondo State. So if we could just do a quick review, what you saw during those primaries, did it give you confidence that maybe we can just pull this off? Mr. Aramu, if you can hear me, I'm referring to the primary elections we just concluded in Edo State. And the question is, seeing what played out, do you think it gives an insight into what to expect come September and October? Okay.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah. Ahead.
Yeah, I'm hearing you very well. I've watched the tape. Of course, there are other areas of those primaries that possibly you may not be able to capture. But let me take the one you have captured. What I'm saying is that does it worth it that we have to be agonizing with face masks, with possible social distancing just to have a vote? Then the second question I also want to ask is that what has been the rate of infection since that primary you have seen and now? Definitely the figures are not coming down. On the contrary, infection rate is going up. There has been it, and that's for those tested in Edo State.
Why? Okay, I hope you can still hear us. Why is your call coming now after the APC NEC meeting? Why didn't it come earlier?
Oh, better late than never. Chambali, better late than never. You know that this is work in progress. I've made a lot of comments on COVID several times. Let me give you an example. I'm also the Vice President of Industrial Global Union. I've been elected, and we are due to have our Congress, another election coming up in October this year. That's what was slated for. We just met, we did virtual meetings about 3 weeks ago to put off this election until September next year, because the risk analysis shows that the figures are rising. We are losing workers. You also know my union, we had to struggle to see how we can postpone our Congress. After that, we've lost a very prominent person within our union arising from compilation of COVID. So I've always been making this noise. I've been saying so. But I thought INEC responsibility is to make the point that we're having elections without going to the mortuaries, without going to cemeteries. And the PTF must be able to wake up to do their job. All we can do is to assist them to do so. Don't forget...
That's definitely something to consider. But, what you referred to the agony of wearing face masks and what have you. So if we were to rely or just, look at that agony, then maybe we should just, suspend life as we know it, because people have to go to works, they have to wear those face masks and endure that agony. So do you still think that's enough reason? Because people will tell you, no problem, I'll wear my face mask, ensure physical distancing, and just go through this process.
When you talk of we should suspend life, but we've suspended some life. Very well that we have been told if you have nothing doing outside, stay indoor. Of course, we also know that there are essential services now that have been defined. We locked down some states, as the case may be. As I'm talking to you now, we've suspended knowledge, we've suspended education. It's not yet clear. And when are we going to reopen schools? Even when we're in schools, almost 15 million children are out of schools. Now, there's a threat of illiteracy to preserve life, because only the children that are alive can learn. If we can...
Comrade, tell us, Since you've been thinking about this for a while, what did you come up with in terms of when do you think we can then hold the elections? Because, I mean, the world over, no one knows when COVID is going to eventually end.
Yeah, but first, the point I'm raising is that between knowledge and looking for what to eat and election is a luxury. Just to give job to 2 governors, and their deputies, it's a luxury. But Chamberlain, I don't have a concrete answer. For as long as the number is rising, we need to pause a little bit, suspend elections. When the figure is coming down and we're on top of the issues, we've done enough testing, there's assurances that there is no stress on public health, then we can open the discussion, for
as you may know or may agree, if you haven't thought about it properly, why should we run with it if it's not well thought out?
What do you mean it's not well thought out? I mean, wait.
We figured it out yet.
It's debatable whether what we are doing now is well thought out. It's not well thought out at all.
Talking about your call to postpone or cancel the elections. What are the alternatives? When do you think we can then hold it? When will COVID end? So if you haven't figured all of those out, are we just supposed to suspend it now? Then when we get to the bridge, you cross it?
I've given you practical suggestion. I've told you in my Global Union meeting, based on risk analysis, what we've agreed upon is that until September next year, when the second wave must have subsided. Again, ILO has put off his annual conferences, very unprecedented. It won't come up until next year. Again, with a caveat that if the rate of infection is increasing, nobody will go to Geneva to hold any meeting. The same principle should apply everywhere. I've told you Bangladesh, they put off election in many states. Canada, they've done so indefinitely.
All right, comrade, we need to end at this point. We do thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back. So we're supposed to get some feedback, but well, let's see. Guys, what do we have? Do we have them on queue? Because we do have quite a number here. Well, but what's that? Bashir, well, he says, I believe a formal complaint to NERC will help you get mileage that will compel them to comply with best practice. Okay, well.
Well, apparently there was a conversation right there on the thread. So he was responding to another user who then complained about some issues. But see, this one from Agba Ben says, I've done that, of course, response, both in tweet and email. Every month, BEDC Power gives me a treasurer's estimated bill. And I have been writing and writing without a reply. It goes on to say, if you check my Twitter handle, I also have the tweet. So these are consumers basically just letting out their concerns, what they go through every day right there.
Well, this one also from, well, I believe that there is a possibility that they must have been reacting to one by, another one by Abba Ben. But then this is James Okafor saying, talking on the NERC checkmating the discourse twice a year, I think it's too little. It should do more to checkmate the activities of these discos.
I think it's more of a review, actually. It's an all-encompassing review, but, Margaret.
Well, let's take a look at this one from Osman Oluwashe, who says, whose responsibility is it to provide transformer to communities that have been existing for more than 7 years and till date have not been provided with one? We've written to all authorities involved and nothing has been done. And he's talking about Old Kamazu in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State.
Honorable Francis Waive, someone has copied you, mentioned you here, maybe for you to notice. He says, for over 2 years, BEDC Power has been defrauding me either, electricity or not. He says he's watching the program on Channels TV now. He likes you to intervene. Well, maybe he's someone who is in your constituency or something, so you may want to pick that up. So there are several others, so you may all have to eventually just go in there and say, always a huge talking point whenever we come up with this kind of matters. But we do thank you all for your messages. Please keep them coming through. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Kayode Okikiodu.
Please do stay safe. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Malcolm Yusuf. Thank you so much for watching.